Nice.
So take us away, Ronnie. Go ahead.
All right. Well, excited to be here. We've been away for a while, so welcome to the Mindful Player. Ronnie Ortegon here with my sidekick and my good buddy Adam Rosales. Unfortunately, Andy Pierce is under the weather, so he will not join us today, but hopefully we can give you guys some good insight. Always when we talk, we're always trying to help just any little tidbit or nugget that would help you. That's what this is all about. And today we're talking about the off-season preparation. But before we get started, Adam, you got anything to say to all of our followers?
What's up, everybody? It's been a while. I'm out here in Mesa, Arizona. My daughter's actually tumbling, so I'm in the car right now, waiting for her to get done. Well, I always love talking with Ronnie. It's a bummer that Andy can't make it, but really excited to talk about this off-season prep because it is so important. It's everything to me, but we'll get into that in a little bit here.
Love it. Love it. So I think one of the big things that I always ask kids that I deal with is, you go through your season and you kind of recap and you look back at the things that you've done, and kind of assess. I think the biggest thing that we have to promote to players is to be able to self-assess and self-evaluate what we're doing. And, looking back on the season, look at the things that you felt like you did really well, felt like the things that you did okay, and maybe the things that you really need to improve on, which is what we're always trying to do to get better as a ball player. But I think the biggest kicker in this whole thing is being motivated to want to get better and, and having that desire. So maybe sometimes it's hard for players to self-assess and self-evaluate. And I think that's where, a mentor or a parent or a coach can come into the equation. But as a player, you have to be able to have those conversations with those people that care about you and have that honest conversation. I think that's the hardest thing. I had a conversation with a kid today and being able to tell him, look, you've got to get better on the defensive end with your game. You throw the ball well, you're swinging the bat better, but your defense is going to hold you back. So what can we do to make that better? So I think being able to be honest with ourselves, and sometimes that's the hardest thing, but and your mentors and your parents and your coaches, hopefully that they feel that strongly about being honest with you as well. So Adam, you got anything to add on that?
Having a mentor is everything too. It's so important. I always had great coaches, great friends, teammates that I would always bounce ideas off of. But for me, you talk about motivation, it goes back to having that goal, right? That ultimate goal that you are working for, whether it's your goal is to make your varsity team as a high school player, or whether it's to go play college ball somewhere, or even like for me personally, I always had the goal to play one day at Wrigley Field. So that's what should motivate you. And it's got to drive you. You got to make it real, right? And that's the motivation that you got to take in the off season, because it gets grindy in the off season. It gets tough, but you got to have that mentor. You got to have a good support system, but ultimately you got to stick to that goal and really fight for it.
I love it. Love it. And, being here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's so many different, from a select ball standpoint, even from a high school standpoint, I think there are so many different programs that are being offered for the winter development, whatever you want to call it. And I think there's so many good programs, but I think the biggest thing is kids have to realize they can do so much of this stuff on their own. And we'll get into it a little bit as far as developing routines that create habits. And that's kind of what the gist of what we're going to talk about today. But being able to understand that you don't necessarily always have to go somewhere. I think it's good because I think people hold us accountable. Coaches hold us accountable. And, obviously if you're paying money to go to a training program, that's going to hold you accountable in itself. But being able to do the things on your own, I think that's going to be huge for kids. And, the old adage, what you're doing when nobody's looking, what is that, character? I think that's a big part of it. So, one thing I want to hear, because I haven't really heard all this with you, Adam, but I think it'd be good for our listeners to hear how you kind of went through your off-season program when you were getting into high school, and then as it transitioned into college, to professional, to even in the big leagues.
The word that comes to my mind first is obviously accountability, but integrity. And inside that word integrity is the word grit, right? Grit. And that's what you're doing when nobody else is watching you. And that's what the off season is all about. But when I was in high school, I made sure I played a lot of different sports, whether it was, trying out for the basketball team at Maine South High School, or doing non-traditional activities, whether it's snowboarding, skateboarding, playing pickup games of basketball or football. I was always active doing something else. And you got to get creative in Chicago, because that's where I grew up. When it's cold outside, you got to get creative about how you are going about your off season as a high school ball player. But when I went to Western Michigan, it got a little bit more strict, got more focused on baseball, but I would still do other activities. I would still play pickup games of basketball. I would still do other sports, but I would really focus on training for baseball specific. And then obviously in pro ball, it even says in your contract, don't do anything but baseball, really. So I was 100% focused on baseball. And it was kind of cool. I sent one of the kids that I worked with last year, I sent him a program, my strength and conditioning program. And I looked back on it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how regimented that was, and how intense that was, and how strict it was, because I had a strength and conditioning coach that helped me, talking about like a mentor. It's so important, and that's going to hold you accountable. If you want to take that route, but I did, and it helped me immensely. And the number one reason why it helped me, obviously to get stronger, but it helped me stay healthy. And I think that is the key of why you do your off-season training, is to make sure that you're strong, but that you stay healthy, especially as you climb the ladder and you have longer seasons. You got to be able to endure the long seasons, have that longevity,
Love it. And you said something earlier when we were talking, how you looked at it in your off season that was going to get you to August or September. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're working out for. Like I said, it gets mundane, it gets tough, it gets grindy in the off season, but you are working for those last couple of weeks or the last couple of months of the season in the off season. That's what's going to carry you into the late dog days of summer, especially when you start going play college ball and pro ball. I mean, you're looking at in Major League Baseball, it's 162 games. And I wasn't an everyday player every year, but it's still grindy to get through that season. And that's what the off season is for. Whatever you put into the off season, it matters late in the season. Whatever if you play high school, even travel ball, college or pro ball, it's going to help you what you put in and during the off season.
Love it. Love it. One thing that always sticks to my mind, Rosie, I remember my very first trip to the Dominican Republic. I went to La Romana. I was with the Rangers. And that very first trip to the complex, we're driving past, and there's these little baseball fields out there. And we're talking about October, November, and there's about 15 kids with ropes around their waist, and they're pulling tires.
Yeah.
And it's like, how creative did they get? And they're just running back and forth. It was awesome. But, sometimes you got to get creative with the things that you're doing to try to help you. So,
you got to be creative, and it's got to be fun, right? You got to make it fun. Yeah. You really do. Because I'm going to keep on saying it. The off season is grindy. I think it's harder than the season. It should be. It should be harder than the season. In the season, it's we talk a lot about like the mental preparation, right? That's what you got. Also, not just physical preparation, but mentally. You got to, whether it's just simply reading good books or actually meditating or doing something mentally to bring you into the regular season. So it slows the game down, because if you don't do that type of training in the off season, it's going to speed up on you really quick. So I'm a big fan of doing the mental training as well.
Love it. Love it. And one thing that I talk to players a lot about is the emotional part of it. What emotions could we get better at over the off season? Learning how to deal with anger, learning how to deal with frustration. And I think one of the biggest things that I see, especially with young ball players, is kind of a lack of confidence, or just getting dejected when we don't do well. Because this game is about success and failure. And just being able to deal with those failures and not letting them define you, but learning from them. and because let's face it, we're going to have a lot more failures than we're going to have successes, but being able to have that grit and, like Rosie said, and that determination to keep coming back. And, all those years that I was in pro ball, the guys that impressed me the most were the kids the players that went 0 for 4, 0 for 8, 0 for 12, and they kept coming back and they kept working hard and they were just resilient and just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And I think that's a quality that we could all try to work to achieve. The guy we've got talking with us here, that was one of the big things that always impressed me about him. Because number one, Adam Rosales was not going to be outworked. That's just the way he was. And that carried him a long ways. Should he have played in the big leagues 9, 10 years, however long he played? Who knows? But I guarantee you that grit and determination had a lot to do with that. So, Rosie, you want to talk about your experience with your grit and determination as you played in the big leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell. So I manage the Oakland A's rookie ball team here in Mesa, and I always tell them, you got to make other people notice you, right? I went to go watch a practice with a basketball practice with my son yesterday, and it was a high school girls basketball practice as we're waiting for my daughter to get done with her dance routine, whatever. And there's a girl running in front. She was like, there's like a 2-minute, suicides going back and forth on the court, and she was first. And I'm like, I noticed her, and I watched her like for the rest of practice because she made me notice her. And that's the same thing that you have to do throughout your whole entire opportunity of playing baseball, whatever sport you're playing, is that you got to make someone notice you, right? But again, like going back to the offseason prep, there's nobody watching you, right? There's nobody holding you accountable, but you got to almost pretend like somebody is always watching you in that sense, so that when the time comes, when you have to perform, that somebody will recognize you. Somebody will notice your hard work and your determination. For me, I feel like it was innate. It's just part of who I am. It's my personality. It's my love and passion for the game of baseball. It was almost like easy for me to sprint on and off the field all the time. To sprint on a walk, get walked. I was more excited that I was just getting on base when I came to that. And just, that's what, like the coach that recruited me at Western Michigan University, he said, I noticed you. I recognized that you were throwing it hard across the diamond, that you were accurate with your throws. So stuff like that, you got to, that grittiness, that determination, somebody will notice it. It will only help you. It'll only help you get an opportunity, hopefully somewhere. So.
Love it. And then the other thing, which is probably the thing that players spend the most time on, is on your skills, on your hitting, on your throwing, on your fielding, on your technique, and the one thing that I've really preached to kids, or the teams that we have now, I want to see two things out of kids. I want to see athleticism and I want to see arm strength. So how can we work on those two things? And I like the old fashioned way with the throwing. Just get out and throw long toss and throw and throw and throw. And, I think that's a good way to help yourself develop arm strength, because I think that's one of the things that across the board is lacking with a lot of ball players nowadays. And then just being an athlete, I think just being an athlete is going to allow you to keep up with the pace of the game as you get older. And you get older, everybody gets faster. So.
Well, with the arm strength thing, really quick, I mean, you got to be smart about it, though, with how to take care of your arm, right? My dad was great with me. My dad was, talking about a mentor, and a good coach for me, is that he can recognize when my arm was hanging a little bit. My arm wasn't feeling so strong. And you got to really be aware. I would highly recommend talking to a pitching coach possibly, or get on some kind of throwing program that can help build your arm strength. And sometimes, the mechanics, you gotta consider those as well, but it's you gotta be very aware of what you're doing with your arm. I'm all about going out and throwing, trying to throw. Like what I used to do was throw from the foul line, like over the far outfield fence, right? So it's about, it's probably like 300 or 100 yards, right? 300 feet. And that was my goal, to try to throw 300 feet. But then again, like, you got to be, like, the point I want to make is you got to be smart with your arm care.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. And the last thing I wrote down, which I think is one of the biggest ones, is your commitment and your discipline. And one thing that I encourage a lot of players to do is how, because it's all about your routine and your habits. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But one thing that I really have encouraged a lot of kids to do, especially with working on the mental part of your game in the off season, what I've encouraged players to do is to take this phone, because we use it so much, and put three alarm times on your phone. First thing in the morning when you wake up, maybe put one 5 minutes after, and spend a minute on whether it's you're going to focus on trying to clear your mind, whether you're going to focus on your breathing, or even you're going to focus on your visualization, and then do it at lunchtime when you know in your school day that you have a couple 10, 15 minutes, and then do it in the evening. And when your alarm goes off, it's just a reminder. I even have guys, with our notes on our phone, use your notes, use that every time the alarm comes out, write things down that you feel like are going to be powerful for you. For me, that helps your self-talk. It's starting to help you create a habit or a routine that creates that habit. And it just kind of puts it in the forefront of your brain. And I've even gone as far as telling kids, get some sticky notes and put them on your windows, put them anywhere that you're going to be going on a daily basis, and you can see it. And it just serves as a reminder. Did you ever do anything like that, Adam?
Well, I used to, for like motivation wise, I had that mirror. I would put like newspaper clippings up, like whether it was like the USA baseball team winning the championship, I'd put it up on the mirror so I'd see it every morning, stuff like that. But Ronnie, this is the most underrated tool in sports.
100%.
Like, and it's so hard because there's a stigma around it. Like, does it really help, like, to do these exercises? It's everything. It's not tangible, right? You can't really measure it. Right? And everybody wants a number to measure it off of, but you got to learn how to use this. That's what's going to separate you. That's what's going to get you through the barriers, the challenging times is this. And it's such a small difference between you and the guy next to you, but it's the mental side of the game. So Ronnie, I love what you're saying and those little exercises you encourage these young ball players to do.
Yeah. And something I was reading today as I was preparing, we talk about habits. How long does it take to create a habit? The myth is 21 days, so I'm kind of researching, and it goes anywhere from 21 days to 90 days, so I think 90 days could be kind of daunting, but why not start with one day at a time? Why not make it, can I achieve that? Just one day. And I talk to hitters all the time, that especially kids that are struggling. When you're in the batter's box, you had a tournament and you were 1 for 12 in the tournament. Okay. Your mind got away from you. Okay. So going into this next tournament, can we challenge ourselves to go one pitch at a time? One pitch at a time. Now, as we start working on our routine that's going to create our habit, can we just do it one day at a time? So every time that alarm goes off, I'm just going to do it this time. And what happens if you set your sights on just doing it for a minute, it's attainable. And that's kind of goes into the SMART goals, but it's attainable. And it's something that is somewhat easy. And then you do it again at noon, and then you do it again in the evening. Now, maybe the next day, can I go a minute and a half, and just challenge yourself to do that? And you may have days that you don't have as much time. Get your minute in, get your 2 minutes, because before you know it, it may not be in 5 minutes. And that's kind of the goal that we're trying to get to. So, and I know all our webinars that we've had in the past, Rosa, we've talked a lot about routine, but the way I look at it, for me, our routine creates those habits. And let's see if we can continue to create those good, solid, productive habits, especially in this off season, that's going to allow us to have a better season going into this next year.
Yeah, and it's tough to buy into it sometimes, right? Like this idea, but I can tell you what, when you're in the season and you feel like it's easy and you're flowing, that's when you know you've made a difference. And that's when you're going to want to do it again, when it actually comes to fruition, right? It actually, you can feel it, the work that you put in, and this routine that you've bought into is paying off. and how it separates you from the guy next to you. That's when you're like, I'm going to do this again. There's something to this. But it takes a little while to really build that confidence in the routine. But once you do, it's a game changer.
Love it. Love it. You know, and the word that keeps popping into my mind, and I've written it 5 times, awareness. Awareness.
Yeah.
Be aware. Be aware. So last thing I want to talk about, a couple of points that I'm just researching and looking for different things. And I came up with some decent little things that may be helpful. I looked at one little spot and it said, stack your habits. So if you're trying to create a new habit, try to tie it into an old habit. As you're brushing your teeth, get you some self-talk. You know what? I'm going to have a really good day today. I'm going to really do a good job of controlling my mind as I'm hitting or as I'm throwing, and stack those habits, and may become a little bit easier as we do that. The other one, like we've been talking about, is just start small. Just set your goal for a minute and a half, whatever you feel like you can accomplish. I think the key is doing it every day, trying to at least get to 21 days. Set that as a goal and then see what happens. Because then you start creating that routine, it's going to be closer to making that habit. The other thing that I read and talked about, making it easy. So if you're going to go work out, pack your bag the night before so it's by the door. Okay, it's a lot easier to pick up that bag and go instead of going, oh man, I got to pack my bag before I go. Now we start building, excuses and things like that. So try to make it as easy as possible. That's just one example. And the last thing that I wrote down, and I think it's powerful because I do it on a daily basis, is write down your self-talk. Write good things about yourself. And it just short, quick sentences. And before you know it, you might end up having 5 pages after a month. And that's when it's fun. When you start going back, I started believing that. I was talking to my daughter a while ago. We were talking about presenting, and she would get nervous presenting in front of her class. And she said, well, I kind of faked it until I made it. And she said, I was tricking my mind. She said, I started telling myself, I'm really good at presenting. I'm really good. And she didn't believe it, but she just kept doing it. And she goes, you know what? I actually think I'm a pretty good presenter now. So, whatever you're capable.
All those things that you listed, I was thinking, man, you are just tricking your brain to do
No
the right
doubt.
thing.
No
it's
doubt.
Amazing. Like if you can trick your brain to do it right, you're gonna benefit from it. But it's not easy to buy into it.
It's tough. All right. Well, Rosie, what else you got, man? I think that's about all I've got on my list of things I wanted to share.
No, I love it. All that stuff is essential to taking the right steps to wherever you want to go in this game of baseball. That's a question my dad always asked me. When I wanted to go to the lake house, or I wanted to go hang out with my friends or go skateboarding, he's like, what do you want to do with baseball? That's a question for you as a player, and coaches for your players. What do you want to do? That's the question my dad always asked me. And it was, I want to play in the major leagues. And he'd always say, well, let's go play. Let's do something about it. But it's all about that preparation, Ronnie, and getting to that good routine is essential for anything, for baseball and anything in life. But Ronnie,
Rosie, I want to meet your dad, because it sounded like he was a pretty solid mentor for you.
Yeah, he still is.
Yeah.
He still is. Yeah, but they came and visited for Thanksgiving, and I got about 1,000 things to fix in the house, and he fixed about 999 of them.
I love it.
And the one thing I fixed is like dangling still,
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rosie, we appreciate it, man. And thank everybody for, thank you guys for coming on. And we're going to continue to do these as often as we can. And you guys look for the next one, and we'll go from there. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for being on. You guys are great. All right. Ronnie, always good talking with you, man.
Same here, babe. You take care.
See you, brother.